In a world full of constant advertisements, the anti-consumerism form of protesting known as culture jamming has become more prevalent in our everyday lives. Dating as far back as the 1950s, this method of protesting stands to disrupt the constant bombardment of media culture that surrounds and influences the masses, in order to wake up and motivate society towards more progressive change. And while we end up tuning out so much of the jamming scene today, there was one particular event that arrested the attention of the entire city of Chicago. An event that transpired on a night like so many others, on Sunday, November 22nd, 1987 at 9:14 p.m., while thousands watched the weekly Bears Report on WGN Channel 9.
McMahon and McKinnon, 14-0 Bears. Then the defense, which hadn't put up a sack in 12 quarters, finally did. Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I. Actually, the computer that we have...
Despite the confusion, WGN continued with their nightly broadcast, and the night seemingly went back to normal. But this was only the beginning of the great American mystery, known as the Max Headroom signal hijacking.
This is Headroom. Max Headroom.
Max Headroom is a relic of 1980s Western pop culture. He was the stuttering, glitchy VJ host of an MTV-like music video program for Britain's Channel 4, where his lightning-fast wit and not-so-subtle mockery of the bands he introduced quickly turned him into a media icon.
Most people only eat revolting things to break a record. This lot did it to make a record.
Despite being portrayed by actor Matt Fuhrer under pounds of heavy prosthetic makeup, Max was marketed as the first ever computer-generated TV personality. Everything about him was the personification of the counterculture that fueled the generation in the dawn of the digital age.
The character was essentially a creature thumbing his nose at the world he inhabited.
Something which was anti-television, anti-corporation, was anti-everything that fed us, basically.
People can be really nasty. Only the other day I heard someone say, he's nothing but a robot, covered in makeup. What a way to talk about the President of America.
Max was always a very political, satirical character that wanted to comment on the world around him.
The big G. Golf. That's what it's all about.
Even though he was just meant to show off 80s music videos, Max Headroom was still given a backstory to his cyber persona. He was originally a reporter who was killed by the corrupt mega media network he worked for, after discovering that their subliminal advertisements were killing viewers. His consciousness was uploaded to cyberspace, and Max Headroom was born. Together with a pirate television network owner, they hijacked the broadcasts of the evil corporation and exposed their crimes to the public, ultimately bringing it down.
We interrupt this program for a special news flash.
Max Headroom was an immediate hit in the UK, and soon after, he was brought over to America, where ironically, his popularity turned him into the celebrity shill he was created to satirize.
He's making his American network television debut, folks. Please say hello to Max Headroom, if this is working. There's Max right there.
Do you think global impact is too strong a phrase?
I don't.
There's a computer software game.
Two books have been written, one about me, one by me. A record album, a movie, and I'm developing a pilot for ABC TV. And, of course, I'm the serious spokesperson for the new Coke.
That's the way.
That's the way.
That's the way. That's the way.
There are some people that have not heard of Max Headroom, but those are probably the same people that haven't heard of Coca-Cola.
So when the broadcast of WGN was hijacked in 1987, everyone watching immediately knew who the culprit was portraying, though it wasn't yet obvious as to why.
Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I. Actually, the computer that we have...
The signal hijacking was immediately dealt with by WGN engineers, who within 30 seconds of the interruption were able to cut it short and switch the frequency of their broadcast link to the transmitter based atop the John Hancock Center. Engineers looked everywhere in the building for a source but came up empty. From there, the night momentarily went back to normal, at least until 2 hours later, when Chicago's PBS station, WTTW, similarly got cut into during a rerun of Doctor Who. And unlike WGN's hacking, this one was far worse.
I'll get you a hot drink, miss.
Because he's a freaking nerd. I think I'm better than Chuck's roasting it. Freaking muffin. Oh, Jesus. What's the wave? I still see the X. Oh, my piles. Oh, I just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds. My brother is wearing the other one, but it's dirty. Where'd you get footprints on it? They're coming to get me.
As far as I can tell, a massive electric shock.
Without any engineers at WTTW's transmitter at the Sears Tower, just 2 miles south of the John Hancock Center, once the hackers interrupted the signal, no one could cut it off, and the broadcast played in its entirety. Doctor Who resumed, but there were now thousands of viewers who just watched Max Headroom get his bare ass spanked on live television.
I got so upset that I wanted to bust the TV set. I really did.
That in the middle of the tape, it's going to be... We're going to have to tape over it.
So what did you think about the whole thing?
Very, very funny.
WGN and WTTW were getting flooded by calls, and by the very next morning, the hijacking became national news. The Max Headroom incident wasn't the first time an act of culture jamming via American television piracy was put in the national spotlight. Notably, on April 27, 1986, HBO's satellite signal was hijacked during an airing of the 1985 Sean Penn film The Falcon and the Snowman, showing East Coast viewers 4 minutes of color bars with text that read, "Good evening HBO from Captain Midnight. $12.95 per month? No way. Showtime, Movie Channel, beware." The culprit, John McDougal, was caught after the FCC received a tip from a man who had overheard McDougal brag about the crime at a Florida rest stop. After his arrest, many people banded together in support of his protest of monthly subscription fees for premium channels. He received a $5,000 fine and was ordered to serve a year of probation. Laws were then changed to make satellite jamming a felony. On September 6, 1987, during a broadcast of the softcore porno movie Three Daughters on the Playboy channel, the signal cut out and was replaced with text quoting the Bible. Through being able to identify and track the jamming signal on a VHS recording of the crime, the FCC was able to convict Thomas Haney, an engineer for the Christian Broadcasting Network, of the felony. After an elongated trial with a hung jury, Haney was sentenced to pay a $1,000 fine, 3 years of probation, and 150 hours of community service. But for Headroom, this wasn't a case of a cable network satellite getting their signal hacked. It was done over local, publicly accessible broadcasts, with 2 separate hijackings in one night, one even showing nudity and swearing, the FCC was going to give them the full extent of the law.
We take it very seriously. We would prosecute with whatever resources we have.
There's a maximum penalty of $100,000, 1 year in jail or both.
The FCC aimed for both. In order to bolster their efforts, they sent in the Captain Midnight and Playboy TV team from the federal headquarters in Washington, D.C. to work with the Chicago branch who was currently investigating the case. This move, while smart on pen and paper, would soon prove to be the investigation's undoing. Through multiple viewings of the 20 seconds broadcast over WGN and the 90 seconds broadcast over WTTW, the pieces to a greater puzzle are revealed. First, the video that hijacked WGN signal leads in almost directly to the second that hijacked WTTW, with a couple seconds lost in between the two due to signal interference. This means that only one video was hijacking the broadcasts. One pirate broadcast meant for one specific target. Next, there's a grudge against Chuck Swirsky, a freaking liberal depending on who you ask, and quite possibly a nerd.
Because he's a freaking nerd. I think I'm better Chuck Swirsky. Jesus.
He then holds up a can of Pepsi with his right hand, which also includes a dildo on the middle finger, and mocks Max Headroom's new Coke catchphrase.
Catch the wave.
Catch the wave. Coke.
He then flips off the camera with that dildo on his middle finger before he breaks into humming the theme song to the 1959 animated series Clutch Cargo, which was part of the WGN-produced kid show Garfield, Goose, and Friends.
Clutch Cargo with his pal Spinner and Paddlefoot in another exciting adventure, The Big X.
I still see the X.
He appears to either fart or defecate, then declare he's made a masterpiece for WGN, whose call letters stand for World's Greatest Newspaper.
Oh, I just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds.
He holds up a gardening glove, puts it on, then throws it away.
My brother is wearing the other one. But it's dirty.
Finally, the video cuts. The hacker is now holding the mask with the dildo poking through its mouth. He's bent over with his head out of frame and his pants pulled down, showing his ass to the camera, screaming, while a woman smacks it with a fly swatter. Reviewing the references made in the second video, along with the fact that they were hijacked first, it's clear that the full Headroom broadcast was meant for WGN. And the subsequent hack of WTTW was done in an effort for the culprits to simply get the full message out to the public. It can also more obviously be deduced that the hacking was a group effort due to the presence of a female ass slapper, although her level of engagement is unclear. But why WGN? Why single out Chuck Swirsky, the sports director of WGN-radio, on local television? While there's nothing that directly ties Chuck to anything, starting in September 1987 and lasting until January 1988, WGN was in the middle of laying off approximately 40 employees across all departments. wgn-tv along with wgn-radio were owned by mass multimedia conglomerate Tribune Media Company through their subsidiary, Tribune Broadcasting, one of the biggest American media companies since 1924. Who's known as a character who rails against unjust media corporations?
Catch the wave. Catch the wave.
Catch the wave. A possible motive begins to show itself. An employee or employees who got laid off by WGN-TV and possibly radio, possibly even laid off by frickin' liberal sports director Chuck Swirsky himself,
He's a freaking nerd.
used Max Headroom, a cultural 80s staple whose conception was based off hacking into the airwaves of corrupt media companies in order to enact their own revenge on the media company that laid them off.
rung above politicians, though. You always know when they're lying. Their lips move. Life
had begun to imitate art. Being a former employee of WGN also sheds light into how the hijackers pulled it off. In 1987, local television broadcasting was done by the station sending a specific signal, called an STL, into their transmitter tower, which have a more effective range the higher they are so that they can send the broadcast out to more houses. The theory to hijack that type of broadcast was incredibly simple. If wgn-tv is emitting their microwaves to the tower atop the John Hancock building and someone wants to take it over, they just need to broadcast a stronger signal to the same tower.
This is not just anybody off the street. He has to have an electronic expertise of some level, right?
Yes, he does. It takes very sophisticated equipment to do this at a significant power level. So this isn't something that just anyone would be able to accomplish.
Finding a place to broadcast from wasn't particularly difficult for the hackers. Any high-up space within the Chicago Loop would do, and the area was full of skyscrapers and high-rises. Many broadcast experts have theorized that the equipment used in the hijacking was costly and top of the line, but Dr. Michael Marcus, lead investigator for the Headroom, Playboy TV, and Captain Midnight cases, didn't agree. In an interview with Motherboard about the Headroom incident, Dr. Marcus said, "I don't think it need be expensive. New, the gear might have cost around $10,000, but would have been available, used, on the amateur radio market. There is surplus equipment sold with this capability. It did need a dish antenna, but if they got close enough to the STL receiver antenna at the TV transmitter, then a DirecTV size antenna might have been adequate." But for Dr. Marcus, following the equipment wasn't the smoking gun that would solve the case. In fact, that was next to impossible. Once the hijacking transmissions ended, the microwaves from their equipment disappeared. And unlike with Captain Midnight and Playboy TV, which were both ultimately solved through digital fingerprints within satellite signals, this one was done locally via an analog television broadcast. So to find the point of hijacking within the Chicago Loop skyscrapers was about as easy to find as a needle in a haystack. If Dr. Marcus was going to catch the crooks, he needed to find where the videos were filmed. Once a likely location was found, they could question people there, and more than likely at least one of them would know something about the filming, or even have knowledge about how the radio equipment works. Due to the popularity of at-home VHS recording, there were many Doctor Who fans who taped the hacked broadcast, and the FCC was easily able to get a copy. With help from the FBI, they received enhanced frames from the video and attempted to triangulate the location via clues in each photo. To Dr. Marcus, the key was in the metal background. It resembled a warehouse's roll-up garage door, so if he could find the matching door, he could find Max Headroom. He also received a credible tip that backed the theory up, leading to a specific person who worked at a warehouse in the city. It was promising, but by then there was little interest in continuing the investigation. All evidence uncovered was circumstantial at best, and it has since been reported that the federal DC and local Chicago FCC teams continuously butted heads, undermining each other's authority. Speaking on this, and without giving a name, Dr. Marcus said, "Our man in Chicago didn't want to start knocking on doors. He was used to more traditional FCC cases and felt uncomfortable doing things he hadn't done before." The investigation also began facing public mockery.
He'll do anything to get back on TV.
Did you see the FCC has already said they're going to analyze these signals and go right to the source and just put this guy out of business?
Right across the hall.
Those are the people who spent 10 years trying to make Steve Dahl talk nice, and they're going to shut this guy down?
Yeah, no way.
You bet. That's the news this Tuesday.
We thank you for joining us. Make it a good evening.
More time spent on the case would soon cost more than the maximum penalty for the culprits should they get caught. And despite angering some viewers and frightening some others, the hijackers simply hurt no one. The FCC had no hard evidence, no real suspects, no more than a general idea of a broadcast location, and no sense of productive teamwork. So, they ended their investigation and went home, and the case turned cold.
It's
By the early 90s, the character of Max Headroom had faded into obscurity. Strangely enough, the statute of limitations for the hijacking ran its course by 1993. However, no one came forward, even for attention. Despite this, the signal hijacking had still clearly left its mark in the cultural zeitgeist of Western media. While significantly more difficult to get away with due to advancements in digital encryption, and for significantly less mature reasons, some people since the Headroom case have still managed to get their transmissions across.
Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available.
10 years ago to the day, the Super Bowl was actually hacked.
Remember when a Super Bowl interruption used to mean a guy who would run onto the field that none of us were ever allowed to see?
Porn playing on thousands of television screens.
Comcast customers who live in Tucson, Arizona got 30 seconds of porn flashed as they were watching the Super Bowl.
We are mortified by last evening's Super Bowl interruption. We deeply apologize to our customers for the inappropriate programming. We are aggressively investigating the situation, including the possibility of foul play, maybe more like foreplay in this case.
But wait, there's more. In recent years, with the surge of popularity for true crime on online forums, podcasts, and television, it's not uncommon to find people posting various theories about who or what was behind the Headroom hijacking. One of the most popular theories claimed that Eric Fournier, former punk rocker of an Indiana area band called the Blood Farmers, wanted to film a music video for the group, and had the idea to hijack the Chicago airwaves in order to premiere it. Once realizing that the crime would have been traced back to the band, he instead made the Max Headroom video, broadcasted it, and got away. It's a theory full of highly circumstantial evidence, with the strongest being that after leaving the punk rock world, he moved to Los Angeles, where he made a series of surreal experimental short films about a vapid supermodel named Shay St. John, who after getting hit by a train, rebuilt her body with mannequin parts.
Hello again. Hold on again. Hello again. Hello again, the dosage is required. Hi again, did you come during the drip drop Hollywood diet? Hi everyone, 2 drops, 2 pounds. Kiki, did you just say something?
Theorists like to note tonal similarities of the Shay videos to that of the Headroom incident. But in a city like Los Angeles, with such a dense population of avant-garde artists, many with overlapping styles and tones, that simply isn't enough to prove he was the hijacker. Unfortunately, Eric died in February 2010 due to complications from alcoholism. He was 42 years old. When asked about the theory that he was the Headroom hijacker, his former bandmate and childhood friend, Harry Bergen, called the theory bullshit, saying that Eric at the time had no real experience with cameras, nor did he have access to the proper broadcast equipment, and knew no one who did. Furthermore, Bergen claims that the only time they were ever in Chicago together was to see the Pixies, which at the earliest would have been on June 4th, 1988, at local Chicago sports bar and music venue the Cubby Bear. He noted that Eric would have found the theory to be hilarious. After Eric's death, interest in solving the mystery once again started to decline, but on November 30th, 2010, just over 23 years after the incident, public speculation was wildly reignited, almost overnight. In a post to the subreddit r/IMA, Reddit user Bowie Pogue of Chicago posted a thread titled, "I believe I know who was behind the Max Headroom incident that occurred on Chicago TV in 1987. Ask me almost anything." In it, Bowie alleges that when he was 13 in the Chicago suburbs, he started hanging out with the city's growing hacker community. 2 of the people in the community were college-age brothers, who are referred to as J and K.
My brother is really the other one. But it's dirty. What you got blood money trying?
Jay, who was moderate to severely autistic, had an immense love and knowledge for radio broadcasting, as well as a fondness for clutch cargo. He and Kay were behind the signal hijacking, with Jay being Headroom and Kay's girlfriend being the woman swatting Headroom's ass. Bowie's claim is based on his recollection of Jay's humor being identical to that of the Headroom imposters. and that the night of the hijacking, he overheard Jay talking to people at a party, saying that he had something big planned. Someone then told Bowie to be sure to watch Channel 11. Later that night, while watching Doctor Who on WTTW, Bowie witnessed the hijacking live.
I'll get you a hot drink, miss.
Because he's a freaking nerd. I think I'm gonna just roasting it. Freaking muffin.
After Bowie's theory was featured on Motherboard, he got in touch with fellow Chicago native and founder of the Museum of Classic Chicago Television, Rick Klein, who watched the hijacking live when he was 13 as well. The two of them joined forces in order to prove once and for all who the real culprit behind Headroom was. With a new tip line set up, they began interviewing local broadcast engineers in hopes to find new clues to the suspect's identity. And in 2015, Bowie announced that they had formally eliminated both J and K as suspects. Based on their research, the crime was almost certainly an inside job, rather than a couple college-age hackers, with the culprit likely being a disgruntled WGN engineer. They've noted that the culprit hasn't come forward despite the statute of limitations running out, because by now, they're most likely a senior citizen, and simply don't want the attention. Since then, the duo have mostly refused to speak to the media about their investigation, evidence uncovered, or suspect leads, with the exception of the occasional Reddit thread or email from people asking for interviews. Many followers of the case have criticized Bowie's theory as being fabricated for attention due to how circumstantial it is, as well as his refusals to comment further on the evidence his investigation found. He's also expressed frustration at being mentioned on Reddit each time the case is brought up, and wishes to simply put the case behind him. Where culture jamming is concerned, few instances of it have ever left a mark as distinct as the mystery of the Headroom hijacking. A mystery that, the more thought is put into it, metamorphosizes its solution from seemingly obvious to entirely impossible. A feeling that resonates with so many people who follow it, that at this point, it may be best to be kept unsolved, and let people create their own truths to the tale, rather than be disappointed in the lackluster reality that the discovery holds. And so, the Max Headroom signal hijacking of 1987 has forever become an American legend.
I got so upset that I wanted to bust the TV set. I really did.
That's the way. Oh, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I.
See, the FCC has already said they're going to analyze these signals and go right to the source and just put this guy out of business.
Right across the hall.